And what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Historic Hot Laps. Look, NASCAR Silly season is already starting to take shape. We're going to talk about the latest rumors, who's on the move, which teams could be looking for new drivers. We're also going to touch on the weekend in Atlanta over at NASCAR, and Ryan Blaney put together a dominant performance. Justin Allgaier survived absolute chaos to capture another win and lock up the regular season championship, while Grant Enfinger earned his first road course win with dramatic fashion over there at Lime Rock. We're also going to head to Wisconsin, where Sheldon Haudenschild and Garrett Williamson put on one of the best sprint car battles of the year in the World of Outlaws thriller at Wilmot. And for our history segment this week, we're going to take a trip back to the early days of NASCAR to remember one of the sport's true pioneers, three-time champion Tim Flock. From helping build stock car racing into a national sport to the unbelievable story of racing with a monkey in the passenger seat, you won't want to miss this one. Buckle up, settle in, let's get some laps in. This is Historic Hot Laps. All right, before we jump into this week's race recaps, we'd like to welcome a new partner here on Historic Hot Laps. That's W Energy. If you're looking for a cleaner way to stay energized while watching the race weekend, working in the garage, or making those long drives to the track, W Energy is worth checking out. Their formula contains zero sugar, no added fillers, no artificial colors or dyes, no secret formulas or hidden ingredients. It's completely gluten-free as well for those of you that suffer from that. One thing that really stands out is that every W Energy flavor is uniquely created by their team, so you're not going to get the same flavors you've had from other energy drinks on the market. Plus, each serving costs about $1 less per drink, making it a much more affordable option than your typical coffee shop stop or canned energy drink from the gas station. And best of all, it's proudly made right here in the USA. So if you would like to support Historic Hot Laps while giving W Energy a try, head over to W and use the promo code HOTLAPS at checkout and save 10% off your order. Now let's get to what everyone came for, all the racing action we had this week. All right, we're going to kick things off with NASCAR, where all three national series put on entertaining shows this weekend. The Craftsman Truck Series made its second ever visit to the historic Lime Rock Park, the road course there in Connecticut, while both O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and the Cup Series took on the new Atlanta and the high banks of Echo Park Speedway. Believe it or not, every one of these races came down to some late race drama. Truck Series, let's start there. Returned to Lime Rock Park on Saturday afternoon for the road course. And for much of the race, it looked like it would be a two-driver battle between rivals Lane Riggs and Caden Honeycutt, championship leaders. Riggs, who entered the weekend as a championship leader, was class of the field early. He put his Front Row Motorsports Ford on the pole, won stage one, and led 48 laps throughout the afternoon. But Honeycutt wasn't about to let him run away with it. The Tricon garage driver stayed glued to Riggs' rear bumper, eventually taking the stage two victory and keeping the pressure on. Then everything changed. Strategy completely reshuffled the running order after a second stage break, forcing both Riggs and Honeycutt to fight their way back through traffic. As they charged towards the front, though, the two title contenders made contact while battling for position. This damage proved pretty costly for Riggs, ending any hopes of victory. After leading nearly half the race, he would limp home in 23rd place finish, and the first truck one lap down. That opened the door for veteran Grant Enfinger. With just 3 laps remaining, Enfinger lined up alongside Gio Ruggiero on what proved to be the race-deciding restart. Rather than trying to muscle Ruggiero out of the way into turn one, Enfinger got an incredible launch when the green flag waved, cleared the field cleanly, and never looked back. Behind him, Landon Lewis made one last charge looking for his first Truck Series career victory, but he simply ran out of time. Grant Enfinger crossed the finish line less than half a second ahead of Lewis to score his first victory of the 2026 season, his first ever road course win, and 13th victory of his NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series career. One of the stories of the afternoon belonged to Caden Honeycutt, though. After getting caught up in a multi-truck accident and dropping all the way to back 24th, Honeycutt somehow carved his way back through the field to finish third. Parker Kligerman delivered an impressive fourth-place finish at his home track, while Christian Eckes rounded out the top 5. The closing stages of this race were nothing short of chaotic. 4 caution flags, an 18-minute red flag allowing, all kinds of stuff. Varying pit strategies, multiple late restarts completely changed the complexion of what had been a relatively straightforward race up to that point. Even though Riggs' afternoon unraveled late, he still leaves Lime Rock with the championship lead, now holding a 44-point advantage over Honeycutt with 4 races remaining before the Truck Series chase begins. Meanwhile, Enfinger's victory couldn't have come at a better time. This win vaults him safely inside the playoff picture and gives a CR7 Motorsports exactly the momentum they're looking for heading into the final stretch of the regular season. All right, Saturday night at Echo Park Speedway was exactly the kind of race fans have come to expect from Atlanta's drafting package over there at the O'Reilly Auto Series. Long green flag runs were almost impossible to find. Instead, the night became a marathon of cautions, restarts, and absolute chaos. When everything was finally over, nearly 4 hours later, Justin Allgaier had once again found victory lane, but getting there was anything but easy. The race featured a staggering 13 caution flags, 4 red flags, 11 different leaders, and 19 official lead changes. The final 11 laps alone produced more than 5 cautions, including 2 red flags, as the field repeatedly tried to settle the race, only to see another multi-car accident bring out the yellow. JR Motorsports looked dominant for much of the evening. Sammy Smith led a race-high 34 laps. It looked like one of the favorites to win before his night came to an abrupt end in a massive 11-car accident, with just 11 laps remaining. That same crash also collected defending series champion Jesse Love, eliminated another major contender from the race there. Austin Hill, the 5-time Atlanta winner, survived a wreck and looked poised to capitalize, but disaster struck again with just 3 laps later. A 7-car pileup ended his night and also took out Rajah Caruth, who spent much of the race running inside the top 5. This set up for one final overtime restart. Brendan Poole took the white flag as race leader, Nick Sanchez right behind him, but heading into the final corners, the two made contact while battling for the win, sending both cars into the outside wall. Waiting patiently underneath all of that was Justin Allgaier. The veteran slipped through the opening, held off teammate Carson Kvapil by just over 1/10 of a second, and captured his 6th victory of the season. And not only was it another impressive win for the reigning series champion, but it also officially locked up the 2026 O'Reilly Auto Parts regular series championship, with 3 races still remaining before the playoffs. Not a good sign for anybody who's in the chase behind Allgaier, but it was another huge night for JR Motorsports, who now sit just one top 10 finish away from tying the all-time record for consecutive races, with at least one car finishing inside the top 10. The playoff picture also tightened considerably. Brent Cruz and Taylor Gray remain on the right side of the cut line, but Rajah Caruth and William Swalich both lost valuable ground after getting caught up in the late race carnage. Atlanta once again reminded everyone why drafting races can be so unpredictable. Sometimes the fastest car wins. Other times it's simply about surviving long enough to be in position when the opportunity finally presents itself. All right, and finally from Atlanta, Sunday night's Cup Series race stretched well into Monday morning after weather and overtime combined to create one of the longest races of the season. If there was one driver who deserved the trophy when it was all said and done, it was Ryan Blaney. The Team Penske driver started from pole, swept both stages, led an incredible 171 of the race's 263 laps, and somehow still had to fight until the very last corner to secure the victory. In fact, Blaney's 171 laps led are the most by a winner at a drafting-style track since Richard Petty dominated the 1964 Daytona 500, so a little fun fact there. But despite the statistics, this race was anything but easy. Blaney controlled much of the opening half of the race, but Mother Nature had other plans. Just after lap 108, rain moved into the Atlanta area, forcing NASCAR to throw the red flag for more than 3 hours. When racing resumed shortly after midnight Eastern Time, everything had changed. The cooler track conditions created a much more aggressive style of racing. Drivers packed together, momentum shifted constantly, and every restart became a battle for survival. Carson Hocevar emerged as one of Blaney's biggest challengers throughout the night. Fresh off his Talladega victory earlier this season at the drafting tracks, Hocevar looked every bit like a driver capable of stealing another drafting track win. He even joked with the team over the radio before the final restart, singing as they prepared for overtime. When the green flag waved for the final time, Hocevar controlled the lead as the field thundered toward turn 1. Behind him, Bubba Wallace gave Ryan Blaney a tremendous push down the front stretch, allowing the Penske Ford to surge alongside the number 77. Christopher Bell then delivered perhaps the most important push of the night, staying locked onto Blaney's rear bumper through the turns 3 and 4. The final shove was just enough. Blaney edged ahead, coming to the checkered flag to earn his 2nd victory of the season and Ford's remarkable 750th victory in the NASCAR Cup Series. Pretty wild. They've been around a long time, obviously. Christopher Bell crossed the line second after Bubba Wallace was penalized post-race for dipping below the yellow line while battling for position on the final lap. That one's caused a lot of drama and controversy, but Carson Hocevar settled for 3rd after leading the white flag and followed by Ty Gibbs and Eric Jones. There's plenty of other notable performances here as well. Let's talk about SVG for a second because he continued proving he's becoming much more than just a road course specialist, bringing home another impressive 6th-place finish on an oval. Austin Dillon, he took that RCR car to finish 7th. Tyler Reddick came home 8th and gained valuable ground in the championship standings, while Joey Logano and Chris Buescher rounded out the top 10. The victory also shook up both of the championship battle and NASCAR in-season challenge. Blaney significantly cut into Denny Hamlin's points lead, while Christopher Bell advanced to the semifinal round of the $1 million tournament after finishing ahead of the Joe Gibbs Racing teammate. For Ryan Blaney, though, this felt like a statement win. He was the fastest car to drop off the green flag, survived a 3-hour weather delay, held off every challenge thrown his way, and delivered one of the most complete performances we've seen all season. With only 6 races remaining before the playoffs begin, the regular season championship battle just became a whole lot more interesting. All right, now let's head over to the world of Outlaws for the NOS Energy Drink Sprint Car Series, where the tour wrapped up the Larry Hildred Memorial Weekend at Wilmot Raceway in Wisconsin. And if you're a sprint car fan, Saturday night's feature was everything you could ask for. It had 2 drivers battling for the biggest win, heavy traffic, slide jobs, crossovers, and a finish that had the crowd on its feet right to the checkered flag. This feature lineup was Garrett Williamson and Sheldon Hodenschild. They shared the front row. Williamson driving the Fisher Motorsports number 23, got the better launch on the outside and immediately took command of the race. The young driver had been knocking on the door of his first World of Outlaws victory all season, and early on it looked like it might finally be his night. But if there's one driver you don't want staring at the rear bumper of late in the race, it's Sheldon Hodenschild. The KCP Racing driver never let Williamson get away. Lap after lap, Hodenschild matched every move Williamson made through traffic. Instead of forcing the issue too early, he remained patient, studying Williamson's line, watching how he navigated lapped cars, and waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. With just 5 laps remaining, the battle became something that came to life there on the track. Hodenschild finally showed Williamson the nose of the number 18 entering the corner, letting him know the pressure had officially arrived. 1 lap later, Sheldon threw a bold slider underneath Williamson. It looked like the race-winning move, but Williamson wasn't finished. He answered with a textbook crossover coming off the corner, driving back underneath Hodenschild to reclaim the lead and bring the Wilmot crowd to its feet. The 2 drivers continued to exchange blows over the final laps. Then, with just 2 laps to go, Hodenschild fired another perfectly timed slider, this time carrying enough momentum to clear Williamson entering the corner. Williamson made one final desperate charge by ripping the cushion through turns 1 and 2, briefly retaking the lead. But Hodenschild answered one last time using the extreme high line through the next set of corners. He built enough momentum to drive back around Williamson and finally secure the top spot. From there, all he had to do was survive one final lap. Williamson searched high and low for one last opportunity, but simply couldn't find the lane to mount after the attack. Sheldon Hodenschild crossed the finish line to capture one of the most exciting victories we've seen all season. It was his 52nd career World of Outlaws victory, moving him to sole possession of 18th on the all-time win list, and perhaps even more impressively, it was his 4th victory in the last 7 races. There's no question right now, Sheldon Hodenschild and KCP Racing are one of the hottest teams in sprint car racing right now. Over the last 12 feature events, they've recorded 10 podium finishes, showing remarkable consistency as the championship battle continues to intensify. Also, though, for Garrett Williamson, this was another race that proves his breakthrough victory isn't a matter of if, it's a matter of when. While he came up just short once again, Williamson delivered one of the strongest performances of his young World of Outlaws career. His run-up finish marked 9th consecutive top 10 finishes and 5th top 5 result during that remarkable stretch, continuing what's quickly becoming one of the most impressive runs by an up-and-coming driver this season. If he keeps putting himself in these positions, that first World of Outlaws trophy feels inevitable. Now, championship leader David Gravel quietly put together an outstanding night. While the spotlight belonged to the thrilling battle for the lead, Gravel did exactly what championship contenders do. He stayed out of trouble, maintained track position throughout the evening, and drove the Big Game Motorsports number 2 to his solid 3rd place finish. That podium marks his 3rd consecutive trip to the podium, allowing him to continue building momentum as the calendar begins to inch towards some of sprint car racing's biggest events. Spencer Baston brought home 4th, while Logan Schuchart completed the top 5 after another consistent evening for Shark Racing. There were plenty of notable performance throughout the night as well. Brady Bacon here in the quick time during qualifying. Garrett Williamson backed up his speed by winning one of the evening's heat races before drawing the pole position for the feature. Sheldon Hodenschild won the Toyota Dash to put himself alongside Williamson on the front row, a starting position that ultimately proved crucial to the outcome of the race and his win. Yet Donnie Schatz remind everyone that he's still one of the sport's toughest competitors as well. After starting all the way back in 19th, the 10-time World of Outlaws champion sliced through the field, finishing 8th, earning a hard charger honor for that one, and another vintage performance from the veteran. As the World of Outlaws head east towards Ohio for a pair of major events, all eyes are on Sheldon. He's racing with confidence, he's winning races, and perhaps most importantly, he's peaking at exactly the right time. If the rest of the field hopes to stop the number 18 team over the next few weeks, they're going to have to find a way to slow down one of the hottest drivers in all of dirt track racing. All right, let's dive into some other stuff, news, rumors. Last week here on Historic Hot Laps, we spent some time diving into the IndyCar Silly season. Looks like NASCAR has decided it doesn't want to be left out of the conversation. Even though we're still working our way through the 2026 season, there's already plenty of speculation surrounding several drivers ending up in different spots in 2027. And as always, nothing's official until contracts are signed and teams make announcements. But there's enough credible reporting circulating that it's worth taking a closer look at. So we're going to talk about a few drivers real quick. And again, this is all speculation, no big announcements, but Let's start with the biggest name currently making the rounds, and that's Noah Gragson. Gragson's future with Front Row Motorsports has suddenly become one of the hottest topics in the Cup Series garage. This really started to gain some traction following the NASCAR weekend at the Naval Base Coronado after his post-race confrontation with Kevin Magnussen. Gragson made some interesting comments during an interview on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. He hinted that if he had escalated the confrontation into a physical altercation, there could have been long-term consequences with his current team. That immediately got people talking, right? Now, was he simply referring to team discipline? Maybe. Or was it a subtle indication that his relationship with Front Row Motorsports isn't as secure as everyone assumed? Nobody outside the organization knows that answer today, but multiple industry sources have suggested there is a real possibility Gragson could be driving somewhere else next season. Again, not confirmed, but it's enough that people turn around the garage and pay attention to it, right? One organization that continues to come up with those conversations is Richard Childress Racing. Following the heartbreaking passing of Kyle Busch earlier this season, RCR renumbered what had been the number 8 Chevrolet to the number 33. Austin Hill has been filling that role for the remainder of 2026, but the long-term future of that seat remains fairly uncertain. Hill certainly has a strong case. He's been one of the most successful drivers in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series over the past several years, winning 16 races and developing entirely within the Richard Childress Racing system. Promoting him would make perfect sense. Gragson also checks several important boxes. He's already proven he can compete at the Cup level. He's still only 27 years old. He has a previous Chevrolet relationship and experience. And perhaps most importantly today in NASCAR, he brings sponsorship relationships. That's part sometimes what gets overlooked by the fans. Teams don't just hire a driver based on lap times anymore. Sponsors have opinion, manufacturers have opinion, marketing departments have opinion. I mean, in Gragson's case, his previous relationship with Bass Pro Shops during his JR Motorsports days could become valuable if that partnership were ever revisited. As we know, they also partner with RCR. When you're talking about replacing a seat that carried major sponsors like Rebel Bourbon, Zone Nicotine Pouches, BetMGM, and others, those business relationships matter almost as much as the performance on the racetrack. Of course, if Gragson leaves Front Row Motorsports, that creates another opening. Front Row has quietly become one of Ford's most important development organizations. Todd Gilliland has continued to improve. Zane Smith is still viewed as one of Ford's young building blocks. And then there's their truck series pipeline. We're talking Lane Riggs, who's been one of the biggest breakout stars of the season. Chandler Smith already has experience in all 3 national divisions. Both would make logical candidates if Front Row wanted to promote from within rather than signing another veteran. Another team worth watching is Hendrick Motorsports. Now, nobody panic here. There's absolutely nothing concrete suggesting Alex Bowman is leaving. In fact, Bowman himself recently said he doesn't feel like he's racing for his job, but this is still a contract year. And when contracts expire, rumors naturally begin. Bowman has shown throughout the career that he can win races. He's collected 8 Cup Series victories since joining Hendrick full-time. Unfortunately, injuries and health concerns, including his battle with vertigo this season, have interrupted what many believe could have been an even more successful run. He's lost a lot of races due to injuries, but if Hendrick ever decided to make a change, and that's still a very big if, 20-year-old Corey Day is waiting in the wings. Day has been outstanding this season with the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and continues to look like one of the brightest prospects for Chevy's development system. Again, there's no indication this move is happening. When you talk silly season, you talk possibilities, he's in the pipeline. Over at Legacy Motor Club, the biggest question isn't whether they'll field a third car, it's who will end up driving it. With Corey Heim already confirmed to join 2311 Racing next season, Riley Herbst has emerged as one of the leading names connected to Legacy's new number 84 Toyota. Herbst brings something every team loves. He brings experience, manufacturer familiarity, and perhaps most important, Monster Energy sponsorship. In today's NASCAR landscape, bringing a long-term sponsor with you can make negotiations a whole lot easier. So be on the lookout for that one. RFK Racing also finds itself in an interesting position because Brad Kay has repeatedly said he wants to continue fielding 3 Cup cars. The problem isn't finding drivers, though, it's finding charters. Ryan Preece has reportedly expressed interest in staying with the organization, but until the charter situation becomes more clear, it's difficult to predict how exactly RFK's lineup will look in 2027. It's going to be a tough one for them. Finally, let's talk about the big one here. Let's talk about Kaulig Racing. The biggest rumor surrounding Kaulig isn't who's behind the wheel, it's what logo will be on the hood. They're increasing speculation that Dodge, or more accurately Stellantis through the Ram and Mopar brands, could return to the NASCAR Cup Series. Kaulig has constantly mentioned as one of the organizations most likely to partner with the returning Dodge program. However, team president Chris Rice has poured little cold water on those rumors. According to Rice, Building a competitive Cup program isn't simply about announcing a manufacturer. The biggest challenge remains developing a reliable engine package. Without that, nothing else matters. As for drivers, AJ Allmendinger appears secure in the number 16 for the foreseeable future. I think he's riding his own ticket over there right now. Ty Dillon's future, however, much less certain. His results over the past 2 seasons haven't matched expectations, and if Kaulig makes significant organizational changes alongside a potential manufacturer switch, that number 10 car could become another seat to watch. So where does all of this leave us? Well, at this point, there are far more questions than answers. Noah Gragson could stay exactly where he is. We don't know. Austin Hill could remain a full-time Cup promotion. Who knows? RCR may go into an entirely different direction. Who knows? Alex Bowman may remain a Hendrick for years to come. Legacy Motor Club could surprise everyone with a third driver. And Kaulig Racing manufacturer plan is still very much in development. And that's why they call it silly season, right? Things can change overnight. A deal that looks inevitable on Monday can completely disappear by Friday. For now, there are storylines we are watching. And as more information becomes confirmed throughout the summer, we'll continue bringing you the latest developments right here. All right, when motorsports fans think about NASCAR legends, names like Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, all those guys usually come to mind. But long before those household names ever climbed behind the wheel, there was a generation of racers who built the sport from the ground up. They raced on dusty dirt tracks, fairgrounds, beaches, makeshift speedways. They often drove the same cars they used to get to the racetrack, and safety was little more than an afterthought. Among those early pioneers stood one of the sport's greatest champions, and that's Tim Flock, 3-time NASCAR champion, 39 Grand National victories, which for those of you who don't know, that's equal to the Cup Series nowadays. One of the winningest drivers in NASCAR's first decade, a member of one of the racing's famous families, and perhaps most famously the driver who once raced with a monkey riding in his passenger seat. Today, we're going to dive into the incredible life and career of one of NASCAR's true founding legends. This is the story of Tim Flock. Timothy Marvin Flock was born May 11, 1924 in Fort Payne, Alabama. At that time, America was still recovering from World War I. Automobiles were becoming more common across the country, and like many young men growing up in the rural South, Tim learned mechanical skills very early on. Cars weren't simply transportation, they were tools that required constant maintenance. Those mechanical abilities would become one of the greatest advantages later in life, but Tim wasn't the only future racer in the family. Tim Flock would become one of NASCAR's original dynasties. His brothers Bob and Fonty Flock also became accomplished racers. His sister Ethel Mobley became one of the very first women to compete in NASCAR's top division. Imagine that for a moment. Nearly 80 years ago, one family produced 3 brothers and 1 sister who all competed in NASCAR's highest level. Even today, that's almost unimaginable. Like millions of Americans, though, Tim's life was interrupted by World War II. He served his country before returning home, rapidly changing America. After the war, stock car racing exploded across the Southeast. Returning servicemen had mechanical knowledge, surplus vehicles were plentiful, communities wanted entertainment, and local racing quickly became one of America's fastest-growing sports. Tim jumped into competition almost immediately. The late 1940s were unlike anything modern fans would recognize. There were very few purpose-built race cars. Drivers often purchased brand new cars directly from dealerships. They removed unnecessary parts, straightened what they could, raced them on dirt ovals, and if the car survived, they drove it home afterwards. There were no 7-post rigs, no engineers, no sim software, sometimes not even radios, just courage, talent, and determination. Everything changed in 1948, though. That's when Bill France Sr. officially founded the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing. The goal was simple: bring an organization to a sport that had previously been chaotic, create rules, award championship, and give fans recognizable stars. Tim Flock became one of those very first stars almost immediately. His first NASCAR victory came in 1949, but this wasn't simply just a win. This was during NASCAR's inaugural season. Every race helped define what the sport would become. Every victory wrote another page in history. Tim wasn't just racing, he was helping invent professional stock car racing. One thing that separated Tim from many of his competition was his driving style. Some drivers relied more entirely on aggression. Tim relied on intelligence. He understood tire conservation before it became a common strategy. He understood patience. He understood how tracks changed throughout the race. While others burned up equipment trying to lead every lap, Tim often waited. He preserved the car, then struck when it mattered most. Modern fans might compare him to someone like a Matt Kenseth or a Martin Truex Jr., drivers who rarely looked flashy but always seemed to be there at the finish. That approach definitely paid dividends because in 1952, Tim Flock won his first NASCAR Grand National Championship. He didn't dominate by accident. He dominated through consistency, week after week, track after track, dirt, pavement, short tracks, fairgrounds, whatever NASCAR put in front of him, he figured it out. His success continued. He captured another championship in 1955 and again in 1956. 3 championships in 5 seasons. That placed him among the greatest drivers of NASCAR's formative years. His statistics remain impressive by today's standards, with 39 victories, more than 180 top 5 finishes, over 300 starts, an astonishing win percentage considering the mechanical failures during that era. And remember, in the 1950s, finishing a race was an accomplishment. Engines failed, suspensions broke, tires exploded, fuel systems malfunctioned, drivers often battled exhaustion in the heat. I mean, simply surviving was difficult enough. Winning repeatedly required extraordinary talent. Of course, no discussion of Tim Flock would be complete without talking about perhaps the most famous passenger in NASCAR history, Jocko Flocko. Yes, an actual monkey. The story sounds unbelievable because today it would never happen, but promoter and team owner Larry Frank thought having a monkey ride with Tim would attract spectators, and it certainly did. Jocko was buckled in the passenger seat during races. Fans loved it. Photographers couldn't get enough. Newspapers across America covered the story. Legend says the monkey became restless whenever Tim was about to spin. Whether that's true or simply racing folklore, it became one of NASCAR's greatest stories. Eventually, NASCAR officially decided enough was enough. Animals were no longer allowed to race in the cars. So that ended one of motorsport's strangest chapters. But the Flock family itself became legendary. You had Tim, Fonty, Bob, and Ethel. Each carved their own place in NASCAR history. Sadly, tragedy struck when Bob Flock lost his life in a racing accident. Like so many families in early motorsports, the Flocks experienced both tremendous success and heartbreaking loss with what they did and what they loved. Racing during the 1940s and 50s was extraordinarily dangerous. Roll cages were primitive. Seatbelts weren't usually accepted. Fire protection was barely anything. Drivers accepted enormous risks every time they climbed into the cockpit. Tim's career wasn't without controversy, though. One of the most famous disputes involved Bill France Sr. As NASCAR grew, disagreements emerged over money, rules, and driver treatment. Tim was not afraid to speak his mind, though. He believed drivers deserved better compensation. He questioned certain decisions. That independent streak sometimes created tension with the NASCAR leadership. I mean, we've seen a similar thing with 2311 racing in the trial and all that stuff we talked about last year, right? I mean, just part of the sport. It just never goes away. But despite the agreements, his respect among fellow competitors never faded. Many viewed Tim as someone willing to stand up for drivers long before organized representation existed. By the late 1950s and early 1960s, NASCAR was changing. Manufacturers increased their involvement. Teams became larger. Budgets definitely grew. Competition intensified. The sport was beginning its transformation to modern stock car racing. Tim gradually stepped away from full-time competition, but his impact had already been cemented. In 1974, Tim Flock entered the International Motorsports Hall of Fame. In 1991, he became one of NASCAR's 50 greatest drivers, and in 2014, he was inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Those honors weren't simply about statistics. They were recognized by someone who helped build an entire sport. Without pioneers like Tim Flock, there might have never been a NASCAR that we know today. Tim passed away on March 31st, 1998 at the age of 73, but his legacy continues to echo through every generation in stock car racing, every championship battle, every short duel, every rookie dreaming of NASCAR's highest level. His story reminds us that motorsports history isn't about famous names we will see on television today. It's about the pioneers who raced when there were no guarantees, no multi-million-dollar sponsorships, no charter systems, no modern safety innovations, just determination, mechanical ingenuity, and an overwhelming love for competition. As we celebrate and honoring, just now Tim Flock simply wasn't one of NASCAR's first champions. He was one of the architects of American stock car racing. His victories inspired generations. His courage helped shape the new sport. His colorful personality made fans fall in love with racing. And whether you remember him for his 3 championships, his 39 victories, or unforgettable image of Jocko Flocko riding shotgun, one thing is certain: Tim Flock proved that the earliest days of NASCAR were filled with extraordinary people living extraordinary stories, and that's exactly why we continue telling them here on Historic Hot Laps. All right, another one in the books. Before we wrap things up, we'd like to once again thank our partner over there at W Energy for supporting Historic Hot Laps. If you're looking for the cleaner, better tasting energy drink that's made in the USA, has 0 sugar, no artificial colors or dyes, and costs about $1 per serving, be sure to give W Energy a try. Don't forget, you can save 10% on your order by using promo code HOTLAPS at checkout. Thanks for supporting the companies that support us. We'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe, and thanks for tuning in.